Welcome to the Teapot Reads. I'm the Teapot. This is what I'm currently reading, and I am so happy to see you today. Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're doing my autumn reading goals and TBR, and just kind of going over if I made my goals from last season, what my goals are for this coming season, if they've changed at all, books that I have like physically with me that I'm excited to read. And one's coming out in the next 3 months. So I do seasonal wrap-ups and TBRs because I'm a very slow reader. And I mean, even if I wasn't a slow reader, this month I've been reading Anna Karenina, so it's probably going to take me the rest of the month. So it would be kind of silly to do a TBR for just 1 month. So I like to do seasonal ones. If you're interested in my last TBR for summertime, I will link that above. And if you're interested in my wrap up for summertime to see what I've just finished reading and my thoughts and all that, I'll link that above and below as well, so you can definitely check that out. Today at the end of the video, I thought it would also be really fun to kind of list off some books that give me really autumnal vibes, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them, but they're just going to be straight up recommendations. I'll mention whether I read them or whether it just gives me the vibe, and it's basically some recommendations for you to check out if you want to read something seasonally appropriate. Now, this is a TBR video, but I have been really bad at sticking to my TBR lately, even with the really loose TBRs that I set myself, so do keep that in mind, that even though these are like the books I'm planning to read, who knows if I'm gonna get to them. If it's gonna be this season, if it's gonna be like 3 years down the line, we'll see. I have a really good feeling because I have really solid reasons behind the books on my TBR. But I'll tell you when we get there. I'm kind of like just rambling, so let us just get into it. I want to start off by obviously reiterating that I am in the middle of reading Anna Karenina. You can definitely check out my reading vlogs I have been posting for this. At the time of filming, only the first vlog has been posted, and that covers my thoughts for parts 1 and 2 of the book. I'm nearly done filming my second vlog for this, so I'm not sure exactly when that's going up. It could be before this video or right after. You'll see. If it's after, I will link that as well. I'm about halfway, like I've said. I'm having mixed feelings about it. I think at this point in part 4, I'm really enjoying the book, but there were some really rough times, especially in parts 2 and 3, that made me almost put this book down. If you don't know what Anna Karenina is about, it is a very famous novel. It is one of Tolstoy's 2 great works, and often called one of the greatest works of literature. It is about not just Anna herself, but it's about a lot of characters, especially in high Russian society, and it's basically following their lives. It very much feels like a time capsule of Russia in this period, the issues that are discussed, the way that they even just live their lives, how they socially interact with one another. And I don't think this is a spoiler to say, but basically Anna ends up in an affair with a younger man, and it's very much following the tragedy of her life. The other major character is Levin. He is kind of on a very different trajectory with his life and with his love. He is in love with this girl, Kitty, and at the very beginning of the novel, Kitty rejects him, and it's following him from there. So whereas Anna's is very much a tragic story, Levin's is a hopeful story. It's got tragedy in it. I don't want to make him sound like he's all rainbow and sunshines, but he's very much the other side of the coin for Anna. So that is just what this book is about. I am, at this point, enjoying it. I will definitely be finishing it this season because I'm not letting myself get distracted by anything else, even though I have been so easily, like, so tempted, I guess I should say. I have been so tempted to read anything but this book lately. The next 4 books I'm in the middle of, I have been in the middle of audiobooks, some of them for much longer than others. I really like audiobooks, but sometimes with audiobooks, if I step away from it, I just stay away from it. So the first one I'm in the middle of, and this is the one I picked up most recent, is The House of Salt and Sorrows. I'm really enjoying this audiobook. I 100% will be continuing and finishing this audiobook because I'm enjoying it a bunch, and I plan on picking up small favors as soon as I finish. I just haven't really had time to sit down with it in a while. Hopefully later today. That's kind of my goal. If not later today, later this week. I'm definitely going to finish it. My goal is to actually finish it in September, not just in autumn, but in September. Oh, I should tell you what it's about. It is a horror fantasy retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses, as well as just having general like fairy tale vibes to it. So YA fantasy horror is really the only horror I will read because I am not a big fan of horror. I kind of affectionately call it like cozy horror. It's Disney Channel horror. Like, that's not like exactly correct. This book definitely has gotten dark, but I'm not at any point feeling uncomfortable with the horror, and I very quickly tend to feel uncomfortable with horror a lot of times. So I just call it to myself cozy horror. So if I ever say like cozy horror in the rest of the video, that's kind of what I'm referring to, like YA fantasy horror that's not too much to handle. More spooky than horror, I guess. I've also been listening to the audiobook for Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. I am 1,000% enjoying this. I have loved Elizabeth Gaskell's writing in the past. I read Cranford and I absolutely fell in love with it. The reason I put this down was because I have been reading Anna Karenina, and reading two classics at the same time was just too much for me. I was losing track of things, so I was like, okay, I'm going to just take a pause from Elizabeth Gaskell, and it's not going to be my main audiobook. This is sort of a Cinderella-esque story. It is about Molly. Her father has decided to remarry when she's like 17, 18, and her stepmother is a rather manipulative person. And yes, I'm about there through it, so like a little less than a quarter of the way. I'm really enjoying it. I love Elizabeth Gaskell's writing. Unfortunately, she passed away before this novel was finished, so I am going to have to just deal with the fact that I will never get Elizabeth Gaskell's written ending, although there is a section in here from the editors of the magazine where it was being serialized, kind of wrapping things up. It's just very sad that it's not over. The other two audiobooks I've been listening to I haven't picked up in a while. One of them is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I am a little under halfway, if you can see that, and I don't know if I'm ever going to pick it up again. I haven't decided if I'm going to DNF it. If I do, I will dedicate a short little video to DNFing it, but I am just so very bored. I find a lot of the things happening in this book completely unrealistic. I do love the aesthetic and the setting, but outside of that, I find it so unrealistic and frustrating to read because of that. Even with the audiobook, I'm like, this is boring. And another audiobook I might end up DNFing is Children of Blood and Bone. I am almost done with this book. I am this far through it, and I'm considering DNFing it. I am bored for a completely different reason. I don't even know why I'm bored. Every time I sit down to try to continue listening to the audiobook, I'm just like tired of it and done with it. I want to finish it just so I can be done with it, I think, but it has been months at this point since I picked it up. Both of these books, if I don't finish them by the end of the season, I'm probably going to DNF, but like I said, they will get their own video if that ends up happening. The rest of these books that I'm in the middle of, I'm not normally sitting in the middle of so many books, but I think I've just been very dissatisfied lately. I kind of talked about this in one of my vlogs, but I've just been very dissatisfied in what I've been picking up. I haven't really been finding something that suits my mood, really scratches the itch, but a lot of these books that I'm in the middle of kind of fall into that issue, but two of them are actually just because I've been taking my time reading them on purpose. The first of that is The Regency Revolution by Robert Morrison. This is a nonfiction book. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, but I really wanted to read something about the Regency period because I've been reading Regency romances and because I really enjoyed Bridgerton, and I've been reading Jane Austen, so I really wanted to know more about that world and time period. I'm also maybe using it for research for a novel idea I've been tinkering with, but this is really good. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's about the Regency, and it talks about not taboo things, but it talks about things in a very clear light that I feel like aren't always touched on in the same breath. It talks a lot about crime and punishment, but then it'll talk about theater going and actors and actresses and how they were treated and how they were reviewed, and it's not the same sentence, but they're close enough, and you can kind of see the relation between the excess of the time and the inequality of the time, and it's really good. It's pointed out so many, not directly, it's not like this is just like our time, but there have been so many moments where I'm just like, wow, this is a spitting image of modern day American ideas, and it is very interesting in that regard to me. Like I said, I don't read a lot of nonfiction, so I read like a chapter every couple days. Not a big priority for me. It's not something that I have a hard time retaining. I think the last time I read a nonfiction book was like 3 years ago, so all of the information stays pretty fresh. I have also been annotating it a little bit. Like I said, I'm using it a little bit for research. So the annotations do help for when I eventually go back and want to recall things that I find really important or helpful. Somewhat similarly, in that I've been picking it up slowly, like every couple days on purpose, is A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow. I'm really enjoying this book, but I'm kind of treating it like a reward. At the end of the day, I can sit down and read a chapter. I've never read anything else by Alex E. Harrow. I do have one of her other books, and I'm really excited to read it. I did tell a friend that I would finish this and send it on my way to her. This is an arc. The book comes out next month, October 2021. Definitely want to finish it before then. After I finish it, I will probably put together a quick little review to talk about it. Overall, am enjoying it. It's very fun sort of subversion of fairy tale tropes, and it has art in it, which is also really cool and really fun. These two books I put down because I got distracted by shiny books, and I will pick them up and I will finish them, and they are both going to get full reviews because they are arcs. First up, we have Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. I've talked a lot about this in vlogs, especially the vlogs where I started reading it. It is a bit like Good Omens in a lot of ways. It tackles a lot. It's about violins. It's about being transgender. It is about aliens. It is about donuts. It is about deals with the devil. It is about so very much, and it is so very good. It was just heavy and dense, especially the violin parts, and I needed to put it down. Like I said, I do plan on finishing it this season, and I do plan on giving it a full review. This comes out September, so I'm not going to finish it before it comes out. It's very unlikely, but I will definitely get a review up. I've read about half of it so far. I would wholly recommend picking this up if it sounds even borderline interesting to you, because it is beautifully written and it is a very important story, and it's very good. It scratches a lot of itches I have for like sci-fi writing. That being said, it was just dense, so I needed to put it down for a little bit, and then I kept getting distracted, and then I pick up a new dense book, which is Anna Karenina, and I'm like, well, I had one going, but shiny new book, I guess. I will finish this. I was loving it. I do have a physical final copy on its way to me because I liked it that much. Just even the half of it that I read. And finally, Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. This is an arc. This came out earlier this year. I am a little less than a quarter of the way through. So just about there, and I was really enjoying it. It is an epic fantasy. It's set during like Viking era part of the world. It's good. I was really enjoying it. I was liking the cast of characters. It did have a bit of a slow start just because there is such a wide cast of characters and they all kind of need to fall into place. It was still really good. I just put it down because I wasn't in the mood for fantasy. I will pick it up again. But as for books that I physically have with me that are on my immediate TBR and that I really, really hope I get to in these next 3 months, I'm going to be so disappointed with myself if I don't. Number one of those is an arc for a book that comes out in November, and this is one of my most anticipated books of the year, so I will definitely be getting to this. I'm actually probably going to read this after I finish Anna Karenina, and that is A Marvelous Light by Freya Marski. This is pitched as Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, except queer, and Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is one of my favorite books, and having a sort of queer lens applied to a similar world is just so exciting for me. I a little bit feel like this book might have been made for me. I'm just so very excited. I'm going to be doing a vlog for this. There will be a review for this. Like I said, one of my most anticipated books of the year. When this arc came in, I was the happiest person in the entire world, okay? I was the happiest person in the entire world. I snatched it up like that. I walked into work, because we get arcs at work. I walked into work, sat on the table, and was like, that's mine now. Yes, I can't wait. I have how many copies coming? I don't know. I've pre-ordered it because I'm just like, I need it. And then this came in, and I'm so excited. These next 4 are rereads. And these 4 are also getting a sort of video dedicated to them. It's going to be a long-term vlog on the series and my rereading experience, and that is for Vampire Academy. I will be rereading the first 4 books in this series. When I say I was obsessed with this series, I mean it. This was some of the first paranormal romance I ever read. I think I read it before I even attempted to read Twilight. Like, I love these books, and they just announced some of the cast for the new TV show adaptation of it, which is being done by Julie Plec, who also did Vampire Diaries, which is the exact sort of aesthetic and soapy drama I'm looking for an adaptation of these boys. I am so excited. I want to reread them in anticipation for the show. I cannot wait. So the 4 books that I am reading or planning to reread are Vampire Academy, which is book 1, Frostbite, which is book 2, Shadow Kiss, which is book 3, and Blood Promise, which is book 4. I have actually read this series in its entirety 3 times, but not in years. Probably not since graduating high school. So at least, was that like 6 years ago? It's been like 6 years since I've read them. I still remember a lot of the major beats, which says a lot considering I'm not very good with details. And I remember a lot of the characters, but not all of them. These books are very corny covers. I really hope that in anticipation of the series, they actually release nice covers. I think that would be swell. They're also kind of beat up and like worn because I've like loved them to death. I also don't think that Razor Bill is an imprint anymore, which is kind of funny. I'm so very excited to be returning to these books and this world. I hope that if they're not good and they don't hold up, my nostalgia carries me through, because I just would be devastated if I suddenly hated these books. Basically, they are about a world where there are vampires and there are half vampires called dampers, I think. The back doesn't say, but they're dampers, and they're basically assigned-ish. I don't think they're all assigned, but they're the bodyguards of the vampires. There are 2 types of vampires: the Moroi, which are like the good guys, and the Strigoi, which are the like horror movie bad guy type vampires, and Lissa, I think I always called her Lisa, but her name is actually Lissa. Lissa is a Moroi princess, and Rose is her best friend and a damper and has been protecting her. And for reasons, at the very beginning of the first novel, they have run away from this vampire world. They have been living on the run, trying to masquerade as normal people, and they are dragged back into the world of vampires and into the Vampire Academy for other reasons. I say reasons because I don't 100% remember why. I think there's something to do with Lissa's parents having been assassinated. Something like that, okay? I don't 100% remember. And that's where the first book starts. This series has some of the best character growth and development of any YA series I have ever read. I think it is one of the strongest elements of the books. Book 1 is kind of cringy and you don't necessarily come out loving the characters, especially Rose, but as the series progresses, it is phenomenal watching her grow and mature. And anyways, I'm really excited to reread these. Can you tell? It's going to be a highlight of my autumn reading. And like I said, there will be a vlog kind of following my reactions and thoughts and experience rereading these books. So if you're interested in that, maybe that is a good reason to subscribe to this channel. Okay, but other books I'm excited for this season and that I plan on reading this season that just aren't out yet, I will put the release date down here. I think I have them in order of release date, but I could be wrong. Number 1 is The Last Graduate. This is Naomi Novik's next book and the sequel to A Deadly Education. It's a sequel to A Deadly Education. So this is book 2 in the Scholomance series. I know Deadly Education had a little bit of drama surrounding it. I really enjoyed it. Yes, it had a problematic moment, but I think that outside of that moment, it really is a very good book, and I was engrossed. I did not expect to like it as much as I did, and I am highly anticipating book 2. I don't think it's a book I'm going to drop everything to read, but it's a book that's going to shoot immediately to the top of my TBR pile as soon as it gets here. And this is how I get distracted easily in the middle of other books, like new books just come out. This book, I think, picks up immediately after Deadly Education ends. I don't want to spoil anything. It is basically a take on the magical school story, except that the school is actively trying to kill the students, and basically surviving the school is how you graduate. It's so much more than that. It's phenomenal. It is such an immersive book and world, and the characters were so likable even when they're assholes and jerks, and the romance has me very, very intrigued for book 2 because of the way it ended in book 1. So that's maybe my main reason for reading it. I think these are listed as adult fantasy. I personally think it's probably closer to older YA or new adult, just because it doesn't really have adult concepts necessarily. And I think it's asking you for the same type of forgiveness that YA books do when it's like how deeply you need to read them. That's a different discussion. I love these books. Then we have the new Stephanie Garber book, Once Upon a Broken Heart. I was really unsure how I felt about this book in anticipation of its release. Here is the thing. I loved Caraval and Legendary. They're some of my favorite fantasy YA books that I've read. That's light fantasy, but it's still fantasy. I loved them to death. When they were coming out, I was singing their praises. I even had the chance to read an arc of Caraval, and I fell in love with it then. Book 3 finale left me so disappointed that I kind of poisoned my memory of the first 2. So when Stephanie Garber announced that she was writing, I guess it's like an encore series. It's following characters from those books, but many years later, and really not the main characters. It's kind of spoilers, I think, to go into it. But when she announced this was her next book, I was so wary because book 3 disappointed me on just a massive, massive level, and I'm afraid for this book a little bit. I am planning to do a 48-hour reading vlog for it. I don't know how big it is. It may not end up being 48 hours. I'm afraid. I'm excited. I hope that it captures the magic of Caraval and Legendary and reframes my opinion of the series again, because just finale really was such a huge disappointment. Probably one of the most disappointing books I have ever read. Then finally we have The Hollow Heart by Marie Rutatsky. This is the sequel and final book in the duet that started with The Midnight Lie. I have the Illumicrate edition coming to match my copy. I am so excited to read this book. Again, like Deadly Education, no, like The Last Graduate. Like The Last Graduate, it's going to jump right to the top of my TBR list. I cannot wait to get to it. I need the conclusion to this because the way book 1 ended was intense, and this is another one that I'm just dying to see how the romance ends in this book. It is kind of about world divided by like magical castes, and this character from a lower caste is given the opportunity to go into the higher caste society through like trickery kind of, and it's so good. There's so much more than that going on. I might end up rereading The Midnight Lie in anticipation of this book because a lot of these smaller details have escaped me, but I also just want to dive right into the Hollow Heart, so I don't know if I'm gonna do that. I put this book on here even though I'm like already planning to read it, and it's The Marvelous Light. I'm just really excited for this release. I will probably read it before its release date. And finally, The Nobleman's Guide to Shipwrecks and Scandal. This is the third and I believe final book in the Montague siblings series by Mackenzie Lee. I am going to be so sad to say goodbye to these books. If you haven't read A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, it is one of my all-time favorite books. I think it is a lot of fun. I know, again, Mackenzie Lee has some problematic aspects to her. I think these books are still fantastic. I actually haven't read book 2, but I've read The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue like so many times I've lost count. And I plan on rereading it and reading for the first time The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy, and I plan on doing all 3 back to back to back, and I'm just stoked for it. These books are great. Her writing is very fun. It's very light, very easy reading, and very angsty. I love angst. I live for angst. So those are all the books that I am planning to read for the next 3 months. So September, October, November. We'll do another one of these in December in time for Christmassy and wintry and holiday themed books. I also wanted to quickly talk about my reading goals for the next 3 months. I did this in the last couple TBRs, and I think it's kind of important to just lay out what I'm striving for. Number one is, and has been all year, quality over quantity. I think if you see my last wrap up, I really managed it. And I also think with the books I have here in this pile, I'm going to manage it. Everything I'm excited for these next 3 months is a book that I highly anticipate or from an author I trust. So I really think quality is going to manage it. That's also the only reason I'm considering DNFing those 2 audiobooks, because am I finishing them because I like them or because I feel I have to? And if it's because I feel I have to, it's really not quality to me. It's just a number, putting down a number to say I finished it, and I'm really trying to avoid that. So yeah, continuing with that goal. I also want to continue trying to read outside. It's going to be a little easier now that the seasons are changing and it's a little cooler. Humidity is dying down. Obviously, I live in the Midwest, so we have like a fool's autumn, then second or third summer, and then like actual autumn. And right now we're in fool's autumn. So I'm taking advantage of it as I can, but especially as the season gets cooler, I'm really going to go outside even more and keep reading. I also really want to find some nice parks to go sit and read at. Another goal that I've kind of been having is to read for longer periods of time or longer periods of uninterrupted time. It is something that I started to really manage towards the end of summer, and it's something that I just want to continue, especially now. Like I said, we're going into the cooler periods of the year. We're going into the longer nights. I think if I can just make myself sit down for an hour and read, I will continue to really benefit from it. I just need to actually do that. It's something that I've really struggled with because I have so many things that I feel like I need to get done or want to get done. And I love reading. It is a big de-stressor for me, so I just need to actually take advantage of this de-stressor and read uninterrupted for long swaths of time. Reading diversely, this is my most important goal every season. I do not diversify my shelf very well. It is something that I am working on, although as you can see from my TBR, it is not a particularly diverse TBR this season. I am going to continue to add books to my TBR that aren't diverse. I just don't know at this juncture like what it is I'm vibing with or what I want to read. I'm really trying to lean into mood reading a little bit as well. But my last season, my goal was 25%, and I barely made that 25%. So I'm going to maintain that as my goal for this coming season. That being said, I would love to manage more than 25%, but as long as I maintain that, I would be really pleased with myself. Baby steps in order to get to ideally the 50% or even 75% that I dream of. Finishing audiobooks. As you can see, I was in the middle of a lot of audiobooks. I need to finish them or decide if I'm DNFing them. By the end of the season, I will have made those decisions, or I will have finished them. It's going to happen. I spend money on audiobooks. I need to finish them. And finally, paring down my TBR. My TBR is very light. It is very loose. It is something I'm probably going to end up ditching eventually, probably in the next year. I almost rely exclusively on it, and I think that is just really frustrating for me because, like I said, I've been dissatisfied a lot with the books I've been picking up, and I think it's because I plan my TBRs out in advance. I'm like, I have to get to this book by then, and then I just get distracted and pick up the new book, and then the books that I feel I need to get to, I just don't get to. So paring it down, working on whittling it away, getting rid of the TBR that I feel is just weighing me down. It's going to be hard because I do kind of use it as a safety net, a safety blanket, but I think it is important for my reading health to just read what I feel like reading and not feel like I have to be caged in by anything else, because there are a lot of amazing books on my shelf that I just forget I have. Before I say goodbye, I wanted to share, I think it is like 10 books I pulled. Yeah, 10 books or series that really give me autumn vibes. So number 1 is Jane Eyre. I have read this book. I haven't read it in a long time, but if you're looking for a classic with very autumny vibes, Jane Eyre is a great one. Wuthering Heights as well, but I think Jane Eyre just has more of the less bleak aspects of autumn to it, and I'm always here for the cozy experience. Also have The Raven Cycle. I love these books to death. They are some of my absolute favorite books in the entire world. They 100% have an autumn vibe. They've got a little bit of a dark academia vibe, a mystery vibe. The relationships are great and complex, and while they do have cozy aspects, they really capture the adventurous sense of autumn and knowing that there are a lot of possibilities right around the bend. I think a lot of times people associate summer and adventure, and I think that's true, but autumn adventure is almost like a quieter, more serious experience, and that is very much the adventure in The Raven Cycle. There's also a lot of Halloween-y type vibes because Blue is from a family of psychics, and tarot reading is a big thing in the books. So yeah, The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. I also included The Villain's Duet by V.E. Schwab. These, especially book one, have very, very autumnal feel to them. I don't actually remember if they take place in autumn or a different season, but similar to the Raven Boys, they capture a very similar sense of adventure. They also have more of the horror element in that there is the revenge aspect and the superhero aspect. It's got a little bit of that fall blockbuster vibe. I love these books. It also has a little bit of the dark academia vibe. I've seen them included in like dark academia lists. I don't 100% agree, but I also do not 100% disagree. We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faisal. I haven't read this book, but for some reason it just gives me very autumn vibes. Maybe because flame is in the title. Maybe the cover is just very autumny. I'm not 100% sure. I just have a feeling this is going to be a good read for the autumn season, especially when I'm craving some YA fantasy. The Magician's Trilogy by Lev Grossman. This is 100% dark academia. Love these books. Love the TV show as well. It has the very much back to school dark academia vibe, and it's very much a Narnia vibe without like the wintry aspects that I associate with the Narnia books. Love the Magician's Trilogy. A lot of complex characters, a lot of dark characters, a lot of upsetting stuff. So I would say look at the trigger warnings, but I love these. The Atlas 6. I'm just realizing now how many DA vibe books I've put on here, but Atlas 6 is supposed to be very dark academia. I do have a copy. I haven't read it yet. I kind of want to read it. I don't know when I'm going to. I think it has something to do with the Library of Alexandria and people searching for knowledge. I don't 100% know. Because of those dark academia vibes and the search for knowledge vibes, that's what gives me a very autumn feel. And Ember in the Ashes is another YA fantasy series that I don't know why it gives me such autumny vibes, but again, I think it has to do with like Ember in the title and just the color scheme. And a lot of the fan art I've seen, I don't know, it gives me not cozy necessarily, but tight storytelling vibes, and I'm here for that. I think it's also nice because it's a complete series and it's not just a 1 or 2 book series. It's like 4 books, which is a nice size. An Enchantment of Ravens. Again, haven't read this one. I think the fairy aspect, fairies in summer go hand in hand, but there's also something about looking for fairies in the fall that I just associate, probably because of Spiderwick Chronicles always made me just seasonally feel like it was a very fall series. Enchantment of Ravens gives me the same vibes. It's also got like a brownish gold cover, so like the color of like falling leaves. A Lesson in Vengeance. This book just came out. I do really want to read it. I don't know if I'm going to do it this year. If I do, though, it'll definitely be this season. This is 100% dark academia. That is how it is pitched. And it's got, I believe, lesbians. So. And finally, Stalking Jack the Ripper. This gives me horror vibes. I haven't read this book. I haven't read anything by Carrie Maniscalco, even though I have a couple of her books on my shelves. I really want to start Stalking Jack the Ripper. It's supposed to be a great series. The romance is supposed to be, like, pitch perfect, and yeah, murder mystery, true crime, that's very autumny feeling to me. Alright guys, that was everything. That was my autumn TBR, my reading goals, and some autumny books that I recommend to you to pick up if you want to capitalize on the vibes of this season. I hope that you found this enjoyable. I hope that this wasn't just me rambling. I hope that this was in focus and that the audio turns out 2 of my major concerns. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for sticking around. If you're curious of my thoughts on any of the books that I said I would be doing reviews for, or any of the videos that I talked about doing, definitely subscribe so you don't miss an update or a post. And if you are somewhere warm, I hope you're staying comfortable. If you're somewhere cold, I hope you're staying warm. And most of all, I hope you are enjoying a great book. I will see you next time. Bye.